Welcome to the Futures Forum Live online, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. On this edition of the Futures Forum Live, we exchange ideas, information, education, and inspiration about the future of Black America. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Get Futures Sense now. Share this story and share our future. Stay tuned for a journey to the future with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
So greetings and welcome to Futures Forum Live, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. So February is Black History Month, and we're having a conversation on the future history of Black America. Specifically, I want to examine how Blacks in America might be faring in the year 2030 and beyond. Now, 2030 is considered a pull year, with members of the United Nations setting 17 goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and goal number 10 focuses on inequality. Now, by and large, most Americans don't care about it, never heard about it, but indeed there has been a move afoot to promote America's Sustainable Development Goals, and in that case, they're talking about how to deal with inequality in America. And so, what might 2030 look like for Blacks in America? Who knows? I certainly want to find out. And so in this episode, I'm speaking with Tavonia Evans, who is the founder and CEO of GUAP. Notice it sounds very Spanish, GUAP. It has a dollar sign, G-U-A-P. That's the correct spelling. So she's an engineer, designer, and a developer, and founded GUAP with the vision of making an economic imperative different. She's we won't say how old, ladies don't want to tell how old they are, but she's a young, below 50, native of New York, and calls herself a mompreneur and has over 20 years experience in the field of technology. She started working in blockchain in 2016 because she identified cryptocurrency as a tool that could stimulate growth within the Black community. And so she's one of the first Black women heralded as being a founder and lead engineer of a blockchain company. And since 2017, well, she's just becoming bigger and bigger, blowing up as a global voice for Blacks in the blockchain movement. So without further ado, I really want to talk to her because economic development is something I'm very passionate about. Madame Tavonia, how are you?
I'm great.
Thank you so much for taking time to spend with me in my exploration of the future of Black America, and as I like to say, the future history of Black America, and more importantly, future of the American dream, which is all about the Benjamins, right? And so we no longer talk about the Benjamins, we're talking about like the Bitcoins or whatever blockchain currency there is. And so I want to begin by saying, or asking you to, let's think about 2030, if you will, and look at America possibly not being the world's only super economic power. 2030, a time when we have 8 billion people and we're in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. So we're talking about AI everywhere, automation, Internet of Things, unemployment. We don't know which way it's going to be going. Unions will have their back against the wall. And so as we think about Agenda 2030 being a time for more people to enjoy a more flourishing life, what do you think that might look like for Blacks in America, 2030? This is a general.
Well, that's interesting that you asked me that question when we just decided that we're going to go forward with our smart city plans and implementing that in the poorest Black cities that there are in America. I actually believe that 2013 is going to be wonderful for Blacks in America. Being in the tech world, we get the opportunity to see a lot of the future visions before a lot of other people do, because we actually create the future visions.
Exactly.
So what I've observed in the last couple of years is now have the Afrotech conference, which highlights Black tech, and that usually takes place in the Silicon Valley area. We now have Buku Black Media. We have media platforms like Blavity and et cetera. So we're having a Black tech renaissance right now. And so that makes people like me very excited because we have a lot of solutions that could help our communities. And these solutions are implemented through technology, various technologies. So the biggest barrier we've had in terms of implementing this better vision has been finances and financial. So now another phenomenon that we've observed is there are a lot more of entertainers and celebrities getting into investing in Black tech, investing in Black companies. So that again is another milestone that we see that is very positive. So I personally have a very positive outlook and expectation for 2030 for Blacks in America.
So let me ask you a question, because I have to unpack all of that. There's so much. There's two things. First of all, I do want to come back to the smart cities that you're going to be doing, because I'm very excited about that. But before we jump into that, tell us a little bit more of what GWAP does.
Okay, so what GWAP is a cryptocurrency that we created that we, most cryptocurrencies, the decentralized ones, of course, are going to be used by everybody. But we created GWAP with the idea of supporting and leveraging our community primarily and first before it gets out there in the wild to everybody. So we're planning special initiatives to support Black-owned businesses. We're we're putting together a special governance for Black-owned businesses and additional support for Black-owned businesses so that they would be equipped to accept cryptocurrency, but not only just cryptocurrency in general, but be able to transact with GWAP, which is primarily what we're pushing for in our communities. We want to be able to segment and leverage the Black dollar. What does the Black dollar look like? In dollar version, in fiat, we don't retain the dollar in our community, and it's a dollar that goes out to everyone else, and we're the consumers. So how does it look when we have a currency that we are loyal to and that is loyal to our businesses?
So I wanted to say then, a little bit I know, and I would say even though I'm an engineer, I could say, people, I am really the old school engineer from way back in the 80s. So what do I know about all these things? But as I'm hearing you, I made a little jump to the conversation around Black banks. We know that Black banks have been struggling to stay alive. How does GWAP interface with the traditional banking community? Do you interface at all, or do you not see any, or do you see some kind of, let's say, a pathway for convergence between Black banks, the payday lending people who really, strip the Black community of money, and what a currency like GWAP can do? What are you?
Well, right now, and when it comes to cryptocurrency, the banks, of course, are not really talking much in the front end. They're not really talking much when it comes to crypto. But in terms of Black banks, I know of Black banks that definitely are open to creating innovation because they have to compete. You know what I mean? I mean, they have more of a stake in staying up with future technologies. You know what I mean? Because they have to fight on so many different fronts. So I potentially see us working together with Black banks and creating something very cohesive, because I'm not saying that cryptocurrency is to eliminate banks in general, but it's going to force it to evolve, because we're still going to need structures that have custodial assets or deal with custodial assets or sell financial services. We're still going to have a need for that. However, cryptocurrency and blockchain is forcing an evolution in that. You know what I mean? So, I see us being able to potentially work together and create a structure by which, we set the template for the future in terms of finance.
The other group I want to bring into the conversation is the Black church.
Yes.
And the Black, let's say the Black sororities, fraternities, those organizations. Yes. How do you see that sort of social capital, right, that we have being, let's say, again, converging with the economic ideas that you're talking about? Have you found people to be responsive to these ideas?
Absolutely, I have. While the heads of those organizations are not quite there yet, There's certainly lots of elements that are within the organization. So I see that, but on the whole, we haven't been educating those organizations as of yet. And I think that an education initiative is called for, and that's something that we're definitely pushing for with WAP, so that we can educate people in the Black church as well in different organizations about blockchain and what it potentially holds for the community. So we're definitely prepared to do that. And I see that coming very, very, very soon.
Well, I do think that, I mean, just speaking for myself, even though I'm an engineer and I consider myself a little bit technical, right? I still can't honestly say, although I have gone online, I've read about it, I still have not been able to like wrap my mind totally around this idea of a currency that doesn't exist in tangible form. Now, it doesn't make sense given that we know, for example, that your money is plastic, a plastic card is not a tangible thing. It's still tied to like a dollar in the bank somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I think this idea of education, educating our community and educating our children, if you will, for the future is critical. If you're talking about by 2030, which is only 10 years away, having guap become, let's say, a currency of choice for, let's call it, even if it's just for your entertainment spending then. That's a lot of funds right there, right? So I really do believe that education is going to be a critical part of the way forward. Mm-hmm. Because certainly even myself, although I'm an engineer, I don't really understand the construct behind the idea of a currency that has no tangible form as a dollar in the bank somewhere. So
one way I like to explain that, if you give me
I would love that, please.
It's the same as, and it's an age-old story that we've been doing in technology for a while. We talk about how there's been the explosion of businesses that don't have any inventory. So you're talking about Amazon. Mm-hmm. Amazon is worth billions of dollars now. They don't own inventory. You're talking about Airbnb, again, worth billions of dollars, and they don't own real estate. You're talking mm-hmm. about Uber, worth billions of dollars, and they don't own vehicles. You understand what I'm saying? So yes. This age of technology that we've moved into, by which, and literally it was begun by the internet, because again, you have websites like Facebook worth billions of dollars, but no type of clear way revenue stream other than, users using it.
Exactly.
So what we're now going into the age of is the age of data. You know what I mean? Data is capital. Data is valuable. Data is currency. You know what I mean? So essentially, data is the currency that's backing cryptocurrencies and currencies. You know what I mean? So, just pure binary, just pure data.
One and zeros.
Zeros and ones are creating the value behind things. So that is the age that we've moved into.
So I want to jump ahead and go back to where you started, because that's very exciting for me. You said we are looking at moving ahead with this concept of creating smart cities in some of the poorest Black communities. And this is where I want to spend the rest of our time together, because I'm mm-hmm. really excited. As a futurist, I've been talking to people in the policy community here in Washington, D.C. about this contract, especially since last year. What if we could have the funding to do a pilot project, right? Where we could pick 10 Black communities and basically for 10 years just run a parallel action research project where the whole community is invested in all these new technology ideas to see how we could actually demonstrate that inequality and thriving can be impacted if we did certain things. Tell me about how you perceive you will be proceeding on this project that you are planning to launch.
Well, absolutely. With the concept of smart cities, you're leveraging technology to, create the flow of society and to solve basic issues that we got going on, which there are a lot of technological solutions available now. You know what I mean? So all of the inner workings based on these solutions that are really not very difficult to implement these days, and that they can sustain themselves through various industries. There are industries created out of this, you know. For instance, while a lot of people don't like to look to third world countries as a concept of smart cities, when you look at countries like India, where they are doing the majority of their work, they're doing remotely now, and they have single-handedly raised their revenue, and they're impacting their poverty by farming out their resources to all over the world, because they're taking advantage of technology. So technology, I consider it's interesting, because in my home, at least within the last 20 years, I consider my home like a smart home. I'm living the life of how someone would be living in terms of a smart city. And then if you marry that by implementing resources like sustainability initiatives, security and transportation, and upgrading transportation, you have fairly inexpensive solutions to very expensive problems. You understand?
But do you have any specific cities that are ready? Because when I use the word smart futures, I'm very specific. S for me means sustainable systems. M means meaningful metrics. A means agility and adaptability. R means robust resilience. And T, obviously, is transformative use of technology.
Mm-hmm.
As you think about this concept, have you already identified, say, 4 Black cities in rural Alabama, Mississippi?
The city that we're targeting is Albany, Georgia.
Aha. And they're ready to roll, in other words, in this.
Yes.
Really.
They're actually identified as an opportunity zone. And as soon as we identify them within our company as the city that we want to work with in terms of building a smart city, we found out that they are already on track for going in that direction and could use all the help they can get. So that's the city that we want to begin with.
This is very exciting. So when we then look at now, how many people live there right now?
The population of Albany, Georgia, last time I looked was, and I don't know if this is an accurate population. I'm waiting to get back some statistics, but I was seeing something like 75,000.
Okay, people. So it's a nice small city.
It's a small city, right.
So then we're talking about smart transportation, smart waste collection, smart government, services,
security,
smart schools.
Yes. Schools and security.
Smart healthcare systems.
Healthcare, yes.
So in terms of preparing now our government officials, the Black government officials, Black mayors, Black county executives, Black city council members, how do you find people responding as you have been talking around this country, for example?
Well, this is the thing. They've been wanting to do it for a long time, but when you're coming from the government perspective, they're relying upon government funding, which they don't get. But now we're talking about bringing private funding in, and that's a whole other ball game. You talk about bringing private funding in, and you change the game. This is a city that at one time had corporations, major corporations headquartered there. You know what I mean? So private funding wasn't a resistant thing for private funding at that time to come in and build. So it shouldn't be a resistance to private funding coming in now. We're talking about gathering together and raising a fund of almost $1 billion to begin building something like that. And in these days and times, $1 billion in technology is not a lot.
Well, yes, you're singing. So what I'm hearing you saying, that future that you're optimistic about is because you're seeing the possibility of technology marrying with available capital with the private sector, driving the change in a very different, let's say, paradigm from the paradigm of the 60s. So is there a way that this, let's say, the story of the future that you're creating, because one of the reasons why I'm doing this project is because I am really concerned that being here in Washington, D.C., I'm hearing a lot of rhetoric that sounds like the 60s. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, folk, we can't go back. Okay, we got to go forward. How do we take what you're talking about, what you're doing, and people like you're doing, and find that meshwork of voices that allow us to scale up, or given the quote unquote the danger zone of people not wanting success to happen, better for there to be a stealth approach. How are you seeing the actual process to move this agenda forward?
Well, first of all, of course, politically, we're getting more involved. I believe we're getting more involved. Millennials are getting more involved politically. Now in Congress and Senate, we have more younger people than ever. So obviously that's reflective of, millennials becoming more politically involved, which is a good step forward, that they're even gaining that kind of interest.
Yes.
And that's a plus.
Yes.
So when you're bringing down the government in terms of age, now you're more identifying with current and future trends and not so resistant to letting go of old systems and structures that are holding us back. So that's for one. In terms of what we need to do, we need to keep applying pressure on our local leaders, on our businesses, on our entertainers, people who are high worth individuals, to begin putting together funds so that they can invest in our initiatives as well. Because traditionally amongst Caucasian Americans, they put their money into funds, whether it's family funds, high net worth funds, capital funds, et cetera. They've been creating these funds for years that they can take and put into whatever type of initiative that they want. So we are now in the tech explosion of African Americans. So we can have funds as well that can fund innovations and projects, et cetera. We have plenty of money. I don't not believe we don't have the money. I believe at this point we have plenty of money to do those things.
How do you see the HBCUs and engineering schools and tech schools and the HBCUs being a part of this change process?
Oh, I see them being instrumental, because a lot of the HBCUs are smack dab in the middle of these communities that can take advantage of these opportunity zones. Like, for instance, Albany has Albany State. I mean, a lot of the schools are in these areas, so they can become integral parts of the community. And instead of being isolated from the community and operating, outside of the community, they can be taking advantage of building up these communities as well, because it's going to be these communities that fill these schools.
Wow, I think really as you're talking, I'm beginning to see the picture you're painting. So what keeps you up at night in terms of what could go wrong with this vision? What keeps you up at night when you say, oh my God, this, I have to make a bend here to make this work?
Well, the thing is, we have to remain unbothered by the current political state and the things that are going on outside of, in the world and the community. We can't let those things stop our plans from what we're doing. You know what I mean? We can't get sucked into the narrative of war, destruction, this, that. We gotta keep planning, creating a plan, and committing to making that plan a reality under all costs. We have to keep focused.
Yeah. Do you think that there are ways in which the technology could disadvantage us though, going forward?
Well, you always trade off one thing for a next when you're moving into a new system or a new paradigm. There's always a trade-off. The disadvantage, I think that we would work really cohesively with technology, because we're really a communal people, so one of the things that gets lost, of course, in technology is the actual community interaction. And I think that's something that we won't lose. I think that's something that could potentially even be stronger, and that this technology can link us in that manner. You lose more, of the social aspect of it when it comes to technology in some cases. Like, we can use Facebook or social media as an example. But again, I think that people are now craving that actual physical, social living interaction again. A lot of people are kind of moving away from too much social media and actually trying to get out there in the world and see the world again.
Moving away from the phones. As we draw to a close, I know you're optimistic. Tell me, are you especially optimistic about the role of women in this space?
Absolutely. Not to say that I don't see the barriers. I mean, as a woman, it's definitely taken me 3 times longer to do what I'm doing than I think if I were a man, it wouldn't take me this long, because I face barriers. the barriers that I face, I've come to realize are even stronger in our community than I thought. You know, I really kind of thought we were a little bit more progressive, but I got a rude awakening in what I was doing as well. And I think it's just because we're not really used to women leadership, and we don't even know how to deal with it. You know what I mean? So in my case, it's been more of a, I've been kind of ignored, you know what I mean? And I could realize why, you know, I've been trained up until this point that I have to speak up. I have to stand up. I got to be willing to shout, yell, get my point across. And now I realize why I was told that. Because if I'm being my normal self, which I like to be really quiet and just observative, then I won't get anywhere, because I'll just kind of be overlooked.
So where do you see GWAP in 2030?
I see GWAP as being a means by which we trade, we you know, buy goods and services. I see it as a driving force in the business community and the small business community potential. I mean, before GWAP, I know how I felt when it came to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is something that I was actually using. I was using Ethereum. A lot of people haven't gotten an opportunity to actually interact with it. Like, it's just second nature with me. I use it like money now. It is money, you know? And I think that when we get to that point, to whereas we realize that this is money and this is used, it's going to be a major breakthrough for our community.
What's going to be your measure of success in 2030 for GWAP?
My measure of success in 2030 for GWAP is that we have our own Wall Street. You know, we have our own way of benchmarking our progress, because I think the benchmark of progress is very important. People don't see, if they don't see the progress in terms of numbers and data, they tend to not believe that it exists. So I see us being able to have, you know, that type of data that we can tap into and see the progress of our businesses, et cetera, and the growth.
Basically a new stock exchange.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a very good place to leave our conversation. It's very exciting to hear about your ideas around using cryptocurrency to transform Black economic cloud, especially with this really growing gap in wealth. And also your ideas around how this might also dovetail into the smart cities. So thank you so much, Tavonia, Evans of GWAP, CEO of GWAP, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, folks, I just want to say it's just been such a delightful conversation on the future history of Black America. And I want to thank you for staying with us as we talk about salient ideas for sustainable futures. Remember, our future is embedded in the landscape of today. So go out and seize your future. We create the future we want. Safe journeys.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Futures Forum Live online. This podcast aims to tell and share stories about the emerging future and help us better shape the future we want. The Futures Forum Live online is a production of the Futures Forum in Washington, D.C. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Get Future Sense now. Remember, our future is embedded in the landscape of the present. Share this story and share the future.